Welcome to today's session on how to make your work for Gen Z. Pleasure to have all of you for this webinar today. Thank you for making time for this webinar. By the way, let me tell you that this is the second webinar on the same topic basis popular demand from some of the people who couldn't make it and some of the people who had to cut it short or some who could join late to say that they would want one more session. And it seems that the topic or the content did strike a fair amount of chord with the people who attended. And we thought what could be a better time than now to repeat. Now, normally it's quite rare for us to have the same topic webinars repeat again, but this is one and the first exception. I hope for many more to come going forward. All right, so let's see what's in store as we go forward. Millenniums are old news. Gen Z is here to take over. As you would discover for yourself while you finish this workshop. Before we begin, just to see where we are in terms of how conscious is your organization about a new generation entering the workforce. I am going to launch the poll, invite you. Okay, you're logged in from another device. Well, I practiced this poll almost 5 times. And I think I'll have to know, you can, along with sharing, you could still do the poll. Why it doesn't allow me to do the poll? Well, since children and electronics don't make you proud when you want them to. That's been my saying when I do stand-up sessions, and I see it's happening to me right now here as well. Can I get some responses in the chat box, please, on how conscious is your organization about new generation entering the workforce? On a scale of 1 to 10, you could put any number. 10 is being very conscious, 1 being not conscious at all. So I have a 10, I have 6, I have 8, 6, 10, 7, 4, 9, 6. Wonderful, wonderful. So give or take, our average sense gives me, say, about between 6 to 6.5, given the responses. I wish we had the poll, which could have helped me do this much better and more organized. My apologies for that. But for now, let's live with the responses that we have. So I take it on average about 6.5 on a scale of 10 is what your responses tell me. And let us see what these mean in terms of readiness and how much of this environment or framework is available inside of your organizations. Okay. What will you get out of this webinar to begin with? We will look at what motivates our newest employee, 4 things Gen Z expects from their workplace, how to create a culture that will satisfy Gen Z and manage employees from and manage other employees from any other generation. Okay. So let's first understand for the purpose and to be on the same page on when we say Gen Z, what are we referring to? So people born between 1996 to 2010 is referred to for the context of this workshop and otherwise as well as Gen Z, which is going to form 1/4 of the workplace by 2020. So even as we speak, this is there. And also, this is the most diverse generation. By the way, I must highlight this to you that I have within the same generation, my daughter who's 1996 and my son who's 2003. And I can completely connect to this slide. As we go, there are some slides where I've had their involvement as well, because while I was just running through the slides, I thought it could be a good idea to do a live sample testing as well to this research as to how much at home it connects. And I'll talk some more about this as we go forward in this session. Okay, so how do we look at millennials, which is born between 1983 1995 to the Gen Z? These are some of the differences basis the research that show up. So when I look at the millennials, these are raised by boomers, and Gen Z, which is raised by Gen Xers. And as we say, a lot of the behaviors, a lot of the conduct that we see is also a function of the environment that the generation grew up in and the kind of upbringing they had. That's why this data point becomes very, very significant. Second, grew up during an economic boom. So if you see the period of, and this is especially in our Indian context, 83 to 85, they grew up in in an economic boom environment. Whereas if you look at the 96 to 2010, had seen two recessions during their formative years, uh, between 1996 to 2010. Then you would see millennials who will tend to be more idealistic versus Gen Z, which tends to be more pragmatic. Um, Focused on having experience, focused on saving money. I can see this drastic difference, especially if I would ask for holiday. My son would obviously say there are so many places in India that we haven't seen, and my daughter would say any destination on the other side towards Europe and then more towards the western side. And I mean, clearly I could connect to this when I read. If I look at millennials, mobile pioneers, this was around the time where mobiles had just come in. Whereas if I look at Gen Z, they are mobile natives. They're virtually born with a mobile in their hand, if I can say that. Um, Millennials prefer brands that share their values. Gen Z prefer brands that feel more authentic. Okay, this is a Gen millennials is more of a, they prefer Facebook and Instagram, whereas Gen Z more of a Snapchat and Instagram. You would see some interesting observations here, which we'll talk about as we go forward. And that is where the shift that we see: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Instagram. And where is this really coming from? Okay. Deloitte Millennials and Gen Z survey. Gen Z survey, which has been conducted by IOC, and the Deloitte survey, which was done globally. So 2019 report is based on views of 13,416 millennials questioned across 42 countries and 3,009 Gen Z from 10 countries. About India, 300 millennials and 300 Gen Z surveyed. Indian millennials stand out from their global counterparts in a few key areas. So now what I'm going to share with you is more centric towards India. More more aspire to make a positive impact on the society when we talk of Gen Z. They are more optimistic about economic and political social outlooks. They are more inclined to believe that business has positive impact on society. And this is not as in the sociological aspect of it. This is more from a perspective that entrepreneurship by and large is good overall for the economy. That's the thought behind this. uh, they are very confident that they have some or all the skills that are needed for future. And if not, YouTube is round the corner to pick up the transactional skills that they would need to go forward. Extreme ease with digital medium for learning. Indian Gen Zers are more inclined to leave their current employer, this is an important one, in the next 2 years. And they are much inclined to plan for a stay beyond 5 years. Both data points crucial. Did I miss something there? The last point. Both millennials and Gen Z are much more inclined to join the gig economy than the global respondents. This talks about a totally different work culture. This also talks about the upcoming uh, flexi offices, uh, workstation allocations, and that whole freedom of how they are their comfort in terms of overall operations. Right? Some more interesting data there. Top 5 Gen Z ambitions. On one side, you see what are the global trends. On the other side, we see what are the trends within India. So India specific data, what does it say? So India specific data: earn a high salary, be wealthy. 68% have an ambition, and 80% believe that it is possible. Versus global, optimism is not as high. Only 61% believe that, and 56% carry an aspiration. C, travel the world. 60% have the ambition. 72% feel it is achievable. Versus global, 57% have have an ambition, and 70% believe that it's possible. It's achievable. Make a positive impact on our community and society, or society at large. 58% feel in India, and 67% feel achievable, versus 47 and 60 globally. Buy a home of my own. 53% carry the ambition. This I see as a decreasing trend, specifically in India, which at one time used to be as high as probably upwards of 70%. Of course, in terms of achievable, of course, given the today's current scenario, I mean, I would say 1 year back as well. So whatever was happening to real estate market, a whooping 81% feel that it's achievable. Global trends are not too drastically different. You have a 73% and a 52%, 52 and 73%. Reach a senior level in a chosen career. 51% carry aspirations. Almost 80% believe it's achievable. And globally, 40% carry the aspiration, 64% feel it's believable. Claim they are satisfied with their life nowadays. 38% feel satisfied in India, globally 27%. Moment you correlate this with the larger data points, you would see why this is what it is. Okay, let's move on to some more interesting facts. Percentage millennials and Gen Z who agree there are no barriers to prevent me from reaching my career aspirations. In India, 80% feel that there are no barriers. Global figure stands at 60%. As far as the millennials are concerned. As far as Gen Z is concerned, 75% in India feel there are no barriers, versus 58% of the global interparts. Percentage who expect to leave stay in their current employer. Leave within 2 years and stay beyond 5 years. Okay. So you have millennials 18, the survey done 19, and Gen Z in 19. 47, 50%, 83% of Gen Z who expect to leave, stay with their current employer. Leave within 2 years, 83%. Staying beyond 5 years, Gen Z, 7%. Okay. Inside Out Development Research, which is the organization that brings this survey to you, the organization that also brings this particular sessions to you, in collaboration, exclusive collaboration with BYLD. Inside Out Development surveyed more than 1,000 members of Gen Z and researched hundreds of surveys and studies to compile this ultimate guide to Gen Z in the workplace. Here are some key findings. Members of Gen Z aspire to manage others at some point in their career. 60% aspire to management positions. Gen Zers know coaching is very important. More than 75% say boss's ability to coach is more important. Almost 1/4 say it is the most important attribute of the manager. I repeat, Gen Zers know coaching is very important. More than 75% say a boss's ability to coach is important. Almost 1/4 say it's the most important attribute of a manager. They don't want a boss who manages through fear. 25% say it would make them leave the organization. Okay. So if their interaction is not facilitative, they are absolutely not comfortable. Those who interact with Gen Z would have experienced that it's more of facilitate versus tell. They are scared of not being good enough. 26% say this is what scares them the most about their first job. The inherent need to get it right, to know the task and not be told, gets them to a point where they feel they have this fear of not being too good. They worry about making wrong decisions. 60% get stuck. And the very fact, I mean, the room to, not do right inherently, because majority of them having the feeling that I'm not too good, leads to another incremental, which is worry about making wrong decisions. 60% get stuck at either assessing the reality of their problem or deciding the best way forward. This will get connected to another data point I'll share going forward, which we looked at how they go about problem solving, decision making. Gen Z wants promotion and they want them fast. 76% don't think they want to wait more than a year. Imagine this. Less than a year, 76% expect that they should get promoted. Okay. HR will have their hands full. So what really motivates Gen Z? Okay. At this point in time, let me take a little pause here and invite some questions in the chat box up until now from whatever that I have shared. In case you have any questions as per process, I'll wait till about 30 seconds before I move on to the next part of the session. Any questions, any clarifications that come to you from whatever that we have covered so far? You can put them in the chat box, please. As far as the given data point, Affluence Connect is not directly there, but indirect connects basis who was surveyed would certainly be there and reflect. Okay. Companies don't grow so fast. How to promote every year? Well, that's a question facing all of us. As much as I would wish, at this point in time, even I don't have an answer. But how do you tackle the problem? Not about promoting everyone, but how do you tackle the problem? You certainly will get something from this webinar as far as that's concerned. While recruiting and hiring managers don't prefer to have candidates who jump in 2 years' time, hard to cope with then. Absolutely. But does this mean that we succumb to the data, or does it mean that there is something that we can do about it? There is something that we can certainly do about it. We may not be able to reduce it to absolute zero, but we can certainly impact the numbers on a positive side. Expectation to get promoted within a year, isn't it unrealistic? I am absolutely with you. It is, but it's an expectation. An expectation is an expectation is an expectation. How do we manage the expectation is more critical than trying to look at and question the expectation. That's what experience would tell us. Sadly, at times, Gen Z thinks it's entitlement and worrisome. Well, I would put it like this when dealing with Gen Z there, and more so when I'm dealing with this drastic difference at home. Difference is equal to difference and not right or wrong. It's about understanding where is this coming from and what is the perspective, and where is it that we can converge the needs and try and find a mutual win as far as possible. It is difficult, no two ways. I manage this as much as work as much as at home. When I at work, since we are into consulting profession, my execution team is upwards of 40 to 45. Average age, I can say, would be around 45 years. That's upward. That's the execution team. And my team, which gets what I say is the front line gets the bottom line, which is the darling team, as I would call it. Their average age would be about 28. And there is a huge difference there in terms of how we manage. And of course, this 28 is gradually inching towards 27, 25 directionally. Yeah. So you would get a lot of those answers. Thank you so much for your questions. And you would see a lot of those questions which are very, very relevant, that if not an exact match answer, but certainly some thoughts around way forward on what you could look at differently would certainly come from this. Rural potential is whether it's necessary to do. Sure, we take that point from you about the rural potential. In today's world, things are changing, not based on years of experience, but ability of completing the task. Sure, they are, Abhijit. I agree with you. But when you have to deal with these two different profiles, your overall engagement and ask on you as a leader is is much higher than any amount of experience can meet with. And getting the task done are two different levels of engagement that you do across the spectrum. So let's move forward. No, we really wouldn't be getting into the conflict part of it. This would focus more about how do you engage, how do you work with Gen Z is where the higher focus is. Conflict, Monica, would not really be a high on focus, but yes, some parts could be extrapolated in terms of what we share in managing conflict as well. All right, so let's move forward. Thank you very much for your questions. As we go forward, we'll once again take a pause to bring that on. Really helps me to make this interactive. Thank you so much for that. Let's move on and see what more can we say. So what motivates Gen Z? Financial security or doing what you love? Doing what you love stands a little louder than financial security. Does that mean financial security is not important? No, certainly not. But given the options that exist, their preference towards making a choice, even with a bit of compromise on financials, is towards first is I should love what I do. Unlike the previous generations where a job is a job and what I love to do could be something else, the Three Idiots has played a very, very significant role there, I would say, not just on parents, and I don't know whether high on parents or children, but certainly on the children it did, and it sees the reflection as well. Right? What motivates them? Well, money is not the only thing, but money is. But then the money is only thing is what they say. I'm not getting the phrase recall immediately. Somebody who can recall that can put it in the chat box. But they say about money that money is not everything, but then money is everything. So it still remains a whooping 32% amongst the others. Responsibility and accountability, and as some of us may have experienced in the workplace, stands at a 7.4%, concerning 7.4%, I must say that. Doing what you enjoy, I already said that, that's a second at 27.1%. Providing worth to company and customers. If you Google the millennials, if you Google Gen Z, there is a lot that has already been talked about. The whole orientation towards providing worth to the company, loyalty towards the company. There is a lot that's been said, already available on the media. So this number is not a surprise to me. Opportunities to progress your career. Like I said, growth, of course. So this stands at number 3. Certainly not a surprise. If you want to grow every year, you're certainly looking at every opportunity around you. Uh, uh, Also, I would say that this is not something which is a concern from a standpoint that I don't perform, I don't live up to the expectation, and yet I want to grow. No, performance precedes the expectation of growth. Because if you see the data points which talk about the pressure of being right, pressure of being able to do the task assigned, loving what you do, all that shows that there is a huge amount of commitment and ownership. There may be a score lower on responsibility and accountability, responsibility and accountability, but the scores which we don't have here, but certainly would be higher in terms of ownership and commitment. And post that comes in the expectation that I need to grow faster as well. Trying something new, 7.8%, and others is about at 2.8%. They want promotions. Okay, less than 6 months, 5.8%, around 6 months, 28%, around 1 year, 43%. Does the rest of the data really matter? Should I move to it around 18 months, 2 to 3 years, 3 years? Insignificant compared to a 75% which are looking at between the 6 months to 1 year. And this is where the biggest challenge lies in terms of engagement, motivation. Money is not everything. Make sure you earn a lot before speaking such nonsense. Warren Buffett. Okay. Yeah, that was extreme one from Warren Buffett. The one there I was looking at is that money is not everything, but then money is everything. I recall that later. That's the one that they talk usually in the financial services space very often. But yes, Warren Buffett also has a very lovely view around money. Right. Okay, so that's the data and that's the challenge. And I think we had a lot of questions. How do you manage this? Is this realistic expectation or not? Well, and like I said, expectation is an expectation. Realistic, not realistic, you can deal with the expectation, but moving on a journey to change the expectation is a far longer one. I see many candidates not recognized in their current assignments have taken any promotion in the current role because by the time it comes and moved to a new employer, my question is in interviews, how can we interpret this and should be considered candidate further or not? Sure, as we go forward, I hope we are able to address that for you, Abhishek. Just be with me for some more time, and this is coming as we're going forward. Okay. Do you have a development plan for entry level employees that provide growth opportunities within 12 months? Okay. So when we talk of expectation, that's one expectation. But is there an expectation that we have set in terms of a developmental plan with milestones and progressive journey that they need to take? How many organizations really have that in place? I would love some answers in the chat box in terms of yes, no. Unfortunately, my poll has decided to let me down. It says I did it on some other machine and this machine is not wanting to talk to me, but that's electronics for you. Maybe the chat box can help us.
So it says 58% of people say that no, the development plans for entry level employees are not there, and 42% says yes, it's there.
Great. 42% is a very impressive figure to begin with, because in my interactions when I meet with customers, I honestly, if I were to meet 10 and say how many of them really have a developmental plan for the entry level, there is a lot of talk around it. But in terms of execution and coming up with experiences post that execution, I don't see much of an action that has happened. So this data is definitely very refreshing to see that organizations have woken up to this reality. And of course, the 58%, it's time to wake up before it's late. So let's talk more about this. 4 things Gen Z wants from a workplace. Let's see what those 4 things are. And these are extremely interesting facts that you would see. Almost half of Gen Zers want feedback at least weekly. Okay. And of course, a feedback in its real sense of feedback, not criticism. And not necessarily meaning that you just pat my back for everything that I do. Just be honest and give it to me on my face. Don't give me sandwich. Don't start with nice, end up with nice, and in between forget the message. Be crisp, be candid. Let me know how am I doing. 20% even said they needed daily feedback just to stay at their job. And I think that's a refreshing change. Okay. Sorry, did I miss almost half? Yes. The next one, 85% say straightforward, constructive, as I said in my earlier slide as well. They want to make sure they are heading in the right direction. Okay. 85% say straightforward, constructive communication is most important. 94% trust a supervisor's input more than search engine answers. Okay? Because that's the last mile validation. That's an expert validating something versus getting all the. So it's like before going to a doctor, all of us go to Google and get some bit of doctoral degrees in terms of information, but we still need to go to the doctor for a final validation. Cutting back to straightforward and candid. If you look at social media, the sheer urge to go back and look at how many views I got, how many likes I got, what are the comments saying, is literally like a drug for this generation. And that generation, when it gets out of the workplace, views, likes, comments become as important as they are on the social media. Yes. And some of them are able to strike a fine balance between developmental comments and reinforcement of positive and strengths comments, and some need a lot more help. And that's why a more engaged hand-holding, especially during the initial phase of being a part of corporate. Okay? Create an atmosphere where they feel comfortable giving and receiving feedback. Okay. Let them know you are comfortable receiving feedback as well. This one is extremely crucial. Feedback for Gen Z is not a one-way street. It's not an exercise where they can only get feedback. They need a relationship where they can also share their candid feedback and very honestly and upfront. And culture needs to provide that. I was working with a pharmaceutical company, multinational pharmaceutical, a brand on its own. And one of the challenges, to my surprise, I saw was amongst the many areas which the organization was picking up at ease on a program that we were running, feedback was one thing that we wanted to install culturally. And especially for generation which had put in maybe 15 plus years in the organization, the whole idea, not that they were averse, but the sheer idea of establishing a comfort zone around it, and also the experience they shared when they really got feedback, was an outstanding revelation on the inhibitions, the breaking of those inhibitions, the experience out of the inhibition, and then setting in of a culture to say, yeah, this is the new normal. This is the new normal, not the one that we're expecting after the lockdown, but this is the new normal that I think I'm comfortable with. It is nice to get feedback. Now, one thing with feedback is traditionally in this part of the world, for us, feedback itself is not a very positive word. To us, feedback is high time. I must give him feedback. But in current context of Gen Z, it is not high time I must give feedback. It is, let's share feedback because I want to see a better outcome and I am confident of seeing the potential. The way I'll give this feedback is very different than I wait and say, it's time, I must give feedback. So the whole process of feedback has changed. It's become more of tell to facilitate. Don't push, give a nudge. Okay. Use 3 questions to give and receive feedback. Here is an example. What's working? Where are you getting stuck? What would you want to do differently? Now here, I would invite all of you on the chat, 71 of us, to experience this. And when I say experience, I invite you to really experience this. For the next minute, and I'll take care of that minute, don't worry. For the next minute, close your eyes and start your journey backwards from the 15th of March when everything was okay. This was just a global news. And take 3 months back, 15th of March to 3 months back, right until 15 December. Close your eyes, ask yourself from your own organizational deliverable point of view, from your KRA point of view, what's working? Where are you getting stuck? What would you want to do differently? Just ask these 3 questions, close your eyes, keep 15th March backwards right into December. Take a minute. These 3 questions, a minute. And you must experience. I could have just walked on this slide, but I want you to experience it. I want you to experience the answers. What comes to your mind? What was working? Where were you getting stuck? What would you want to do differently? Oh, yes, indeed. Stop, start, continue. Yeah. And look at the simplicity of just these 3 questions, but they literally do a mini appraisal for us. Because you're not going to write, I was sending my mails, I was coming office on time, I was responding to my colleagues. No, what was working, you will actually want to think, what are the big rocks I moved in order to move the scoreboard? What are the big ticket ones which I had thought of finishing in the last quarter? I couldn't. Where did I really get stuck? I mean, invariably, when I am doing this in a class, these are the kind of responses that come. What would I want to do differently? Where do I need more skills? Where I can go and sharpen the saw? Where I need my supervisor's support? You learn where your productive times are. Yeah, a lot in a minute. Also, a lot can come up. So now take these 3 powerful questions as your tool to engage into a facilitative feedback with Gen Z. Amazing power on what it can bring up. Now, that's also a way of feedback where there is no labeling, there is no judgment. this feedback chances of sticking and working are far higher versus a feedback which invariably meets with an attack and defend conversation. My conversation and feedback looks like more of an attack, and the other person gets into a defensive mode. Doesn't yield much of a result. But if one were to just put up these three simple questions, the message is automatically sent, which is highly facilitative in nature. So don't push, just a nudge is good enough. Okay. Let's move further. Want good relationships with the boss. More than half of employees who leave an organization do so because of bad bosses. This is one thing that has remained constant since time immemorial, but it's only becoming more and more expensive and crucial now because bosses are many, people who would come and work are very few in terms of talent. Another thing is HR, a lot of us would notice that the depleting rate, any talent that we are getting today, the one that you have in outside is no better than what we have already on the inside. The quality of talent that is coming in is a declining trend, and those who are few, far few and lesser, the accessibility becomes a question mark for the organization in terms of on how do we address that challenge of talent. Therefore, it makes a lot more sense to hold on to what we have and have a robust, strong, focused developmental approach towards them rather than looking at a talent pool from outside. Of course, whatever that you get from outside forms a part of this development journey. Okay. 60%, why they want a role model. 60% aspire management positions. 1/5 would leave a company altogether if their bosses didn't give credit where it was due. Okay, so if you remember the other one where I said that they would want to move on from a company if not promoted. Now this is not promoted just because I was in the queue and my number has come. I performed. You gave me a task. I did it. I need to see myself grow, and which is where 1/5 in the company leave the company altogether if boss did not give them credit where it was due. Okay. 42% agree that public recognition and praise, this again remains to be favorite engagement method of public recognition, praise in public and recognition method by boss. Tip: coaching builds relationship. 75% say their boss's ability to coach is important to them. A quarter say that their coaching is most important thing a manager can do. So, and that's why we see the whole buzz around coaching that's happening, and the whole excitement within organizations of establishing coaching as a culture, looking at outsourcing coaching, people going in for their own coaching. But there is a huge but on how organizations are making this very expensive choice. What is the due diligence that they need to do before they step on this expensive journey, and how they can also look at opportunities on making this journey inexpensive and making it as a part of the cultural fabric inside of the organization. In my experience, a lot of managers have grossly misunderstood coaching. I am so much with you when you say that. I'm so much with you. And at times when I'm inside of the organization, my heart bleeds to see that we use such an expensive alternative in terms of solving a problem, which could have been done at 1/3 the cost. But again, it's more to do with the awareness, more to do with the confidence, more to do with second-hand experience being shared across community for people to really leverage coaching, which I believe is going to be one of the most essential leadership qualities in coming times. It already is in that sense in a very big way, but more at a formal level, more at a vocal level, more at occupying the right space in the competency framework inside of organization. All right, let's move forward. How confident are you that your managers in your manager's ability to coach? Savneet, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Could you launch the poll?
Done, sir.
All right, so how many responses have you got, Savneet? Fair enough to share the poll results? How confident are you in your manager's ability to coach?
40 as of now, sir. I'm ending the poll and I'll just share the results. Okay, can you see the results?
No,
So
you could just say that. Yeah.
Okay, so 35% of the people say that on a scale of 1 to 5, they are on the scale, they're rating their managers on 4.
So they are confident that your managers have the ability to coach. That is excellent to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. Our experience, though, says otherwise. But let's go with the number that we have and see how people are engaging. 77% of Gen Z creating freedom to fail is more important than establishing accountability. Okay. And one of the ways that they view this is a safe place for failure. I love what I do, so obviously I'm doing it to be making it a success. But what they say, give them the environment, make it safe for them to explore what they bring to the workplace. The best thing leadership could do for its people is to make the environment safe for them to explore what they have on them on the inside. People are what they are because of what they know, not because of what they don't. After all, each organization today has a fairly stable and robust mechanism to take people on board. So no way you would take a person who doesn't carry the competence, is not fit for the role, consciously gets into an organization. Very rare chance of that. So they are there to make a success. Now we've hired them for a certain capability. We owe it to them to make it safe for them. Of course, one would definitely evaluate the risk, pros and cons of what kind of task and what not. That's a given. They see failure as a next logical step towards success. So failure is not bad. I was in an entrepreneur conference where they were saying in India, it's such a taboo to see that, your business didn't work out. A startup is about having the spirit, going full gung ho. But if I go with the fear, what will the society, what will the world, what will the people, what are the finances going to say if this doesn't work out? Imagine the pressure at an early stage where startups require a huge amount of innovation and risk-taking capability, which is which gets under this whole pressure. Practically not possible to give opportunity to failure. I addressed that by saying there is something called as controlled failure. When you develop people from an maturity level M1 to M4, there are many journeys they go, whereas a leader we provide controlled failure. It is not that I expose them to the highest risk. So I would invite you to look at this differently by simply looking at that there is no opportunity. Okay. Success and failure are sides of the same coin to that extent. Okay, 80% say overwhelming failure will make them more innovative. Overcoming failure will make them more innovative professionals. 17% said failure will prepare them for new challenges. 54% admitted they were afraid of to ask for help, even though they knew it would help them in their careers. Failures will set them up for future success. Why? Okay, so now, here comes some of the tips that we could provide you for in terms of that could support you through a lot of challenges that were on your mind and that came up in your questions as well. Is number one, adopting an inside-out mindset. Absolutely in time, absolutely relevant from a Gen Z perspective. Understanding the concept of how does really the wheel of performance move for people. We all hire for knowledge. But if knowledge was the only thing in performance, people could read books and achieve what they wanted to, including some of us who are on the webinar today. But it takes something more than the knowledge. A lot of us from this webinar also will carry back the knowledge, but it's more important what will we do with the knowledge than the mere knowledge itself, which is how do we, the three components beyond knowledge are focus, faith, and fire, also called as K3F. Faith, fire, focus. If pointed in the right direction, they enable to make the wheel of performance move. And to help it point in the right direction and get the maximum from wheel of performance is the concept of popularly known as the GROW model. But in case of inside out mindset, used as a coaching conversational tool in different types of conversation, which is setting the goal, helping them understand the reality, helping them look at what else and all the options and deciding a way forward, which happens to be one of the biggest challenge areas for Gen Z and creating that framework of success. We'll talk more about this in our subsequent slide. More than half are worried about not fitting into their career. Helping them build that confidence at the initial stage becomes critical on how, and is a function of how we engage with them. Why? They don't have experience making big decisions. Okay, that's why failing with smaller decisions is more encouraged so that it builds towards a level where they can start taking bigger decisions as well. Okay. 68% think companies' decisions should be made collaboratively. 26% say, and when it means collaboratively within their zone and environment, are they involved? Are they made to be part of the decision-making process? It goes without saying. The whole ownership and commitment when I have been part of the process is far superior when then it is just given on to me as an additional task. So if I want to see success, involving people early on, getting them on the bus, goes without saying, would give you much better desired results that you're looking at. 26% say being not good enough is what scares them the most. And this is the second reinforcement we see of this. Okay. Now, how does Grow really play an important role in moving the wheel of performance? Goal. What? So to look at how the popular model of Grow has been used here from a coaching standpoint, what increased performance looks like for me. So defining what the real goal is, what do I really want out of my job? What does increased performance, what does the end state, the picture look like for me? What is my reality? Where do I stand today in terms of my knowledge, in terms of my skills, barriers, and support that could impact my achievement of the goal? What are my possibilities, options available to me, possibilities available to me as to make decisions from? Way forward, the specific actions plan selected from available options. Now, this is a robust, tried, tested medium of engaging, which delivers a lot of the expectations that Gen Z has. It provides a framework of taking charge. It provides a collaborative framework of taking charge of their own decision. In absence of a robust decision, robust developmental plan as well, acts as putting the ownership and commitment towards their own goals, which mutually decided with the supervisor, provided supervisor is able to hold on conversation on these lines as and living the role of a coach with them. And where do we see when we look at Gen Z as an area of opportunity being the highest? They get stuck 19% when it comes to goal, 29% with reality, which is acknowledging what the current realities are, 22% in options, and 28% in terms of how do they look at the way forward. This is where they get stuck, and that is where managers' role as a coach to have this facilitative conversation on lines of grow makes a huge difference. Okay. How to deal with Gen Z in that case? Okay. What managers feel for Gen Z, believe that Gen Z will be more difficult to manage, 36%. Okay. Expect it to be more difficult to train them, 29%. Said it will be difficult to communicate with them, 26%. Believe Gen Z will not work as hard as millennials, 27%. Okay, that is what the mindset, that is what the feeling of managers, orientation of managers is. 5 tips to lead Gen Z. Okay, create an open two-way communication and give frequent feedbacks. Process of feedback. We shared with you one of the methodologies, the 3 W's. Work with their competitive and entrepreneurial tendencies. How do I build on the positives? How do I build on what they already bring to the party? Never manage or motivate through fear. This is one that is certainly going to get their backs up. Teach them soft skills and decision-making patterns. Provide effective coaching to help them actualize their higher aspiration. Okay. Develop an effective culture of coaching. An empowering culture is number one way or to keep Gen Z an organization for more than 3 years. We were talking earlier about how do we keep people at the same place in terms of work more than 3 years. And one of the things is how engaged I've been able to keep this generation given their attention spans. And a regular feedback conversation, regular goal setting conversation, and time-based, milestone-based steps is a great way of a leader to engage them in terms of the task. Okay. Develop an effective culture of coaching, extremely critical between winning and losing going forward. Coaching directed to make measurable impacts. More than training, and not that training is important, it plays a very crucial role, but between and training and actual application, one thing that really stands to bridge the gap is coaching. It is directed to make measurable impacts. X to Y is a lot more sharper and clearer. Shared understanding of language and practice of coaching. Leaders reinforce and participate in coaching. Coaching programs extend to all populations. Coaching conversations flow in all directions. Okay. Develop an effective culture of coaching. Model effective coaching to Gen Z employees. Familiarize them with coaching techniques. Empower them to coach themselves and their peers. So it's not about a leader always acquiring the role of coach, but is there a mechanism where they could also look at a mechanism of being able to coach themselves through some difficult situations or challenges that come across in the workplace? Okay. So that brings me towards the end. And once again, I would open the chat box for questions that you would have before we go on to the final poll. Do you want me to go back? We have 5 tips, sure. So I will just go back to the 5 tips and keep them for you. There you go. Gen Z feel they want to be a part of decision making, irrespective of small or big. They feel the shared suggestions or ideas. Totally, moment is the key. Gen Z wants to solve their problem as a coach or manager. How do you deal with them? I go back here to saying that if you feed a man with fish, you feed them all their life, but you teach a man to fish, they feed themselves for life. It's not about managers solving the problem. When manager tries to solve the problem, you're in a way thrusting or giving your solution and creating a dependence, versus a coaching mechanism which enables them, a manager's role as a coach which enables them to solve their own problems rather than you giving them an answer. Okay. So Savneet, if we could put up the poll as well. While we can continue in the chat box, I invite if you could also help us with your feedback, which will be up on your screens in moments from now. Savneet, are you there?
Hello, sir, I've launched a poll.
All right, so requesting everyone to please take the poll and give us your valuable feedback and suggestions as well. Question: most people managers managing motivating through fear yields to suboptimal results. Well, Atit, it's also about they getting to know the feedback. A lot of times people do a lot of things which they know is not the best thing. For example, all of us know that exercise is good for health. Having 6 to 8 glasses of water during the day is good for health. How many of us really practice it? The challenge is to bridge the gap of knowing versus doing. And that is where those managers need a huge amount of support before it becomes too late. Short PPT for the session would be shared. You will need to write into the mail IDs, and once you register, there is a process that will take over. So you'll also get updates on subsequent and other seminars, webinars that we organize along with the PPT for this. Question: how do we engage Gen Z when they need something new or on a very regular basis? Abhijit, I again go back to the conversation of what is the goal? Something new with regard to what? If the connect is towards the larger goal that we are setting them on, then what it requires frequently is a check-in conversation to that progress. The newness emerges from check-in rather than a new goal each time. So the first part of that step lies in how am I engaged in a goal conversation with them? And it is not about, set. A lot of times when I am interacting with people, it's about, do I set up every time a coaching conversation? Certainly not. It is your capability to bring in coaching to every conversation. It's not about, so because
my question would be, there are, let's say in a team, there are 4 or 5 people. From that, some people are Gen Z and 1 or 2 people are from Gen X. Okay. So nowadays the millennials are very much into that they need something new in every aspect, whatever they have been doing. They get bored within some time, and then they feel this company is not great. I need to change my company, and then they jump off. So that's where a difficult time comes in, that I understand the goal setting up is there. We cannot change the goals every time, but the way we are functioning as a team, it does affect for the other team members where there's a mixed crowd. How to deal at that situation?
Sure. I once again invite, it's not just about a goal conversation. Goal is one of the tools. It's, as an organization, what are the various levers that I'm using to bring in that level of engagement? Is there a planned, focused developmental journey spread over a period of time? So I'll give you an example of, for example, IKEA. It has a journey right from the time, irrespective of whichever department division that you're getting in, from an entry level to becoming the managing director of the organization. The path is well set. I'm not inviting that every company should have that. Each businesses are different, but it's well set. And in a retail business, that very much possible, because person who's joined at entry can tomorrow certainly lead an organization much better than anyone who just comes in and is been at the top. So coming back to your question, it's about goal is just one part of it. Continuously engaged journey, which is based on developmental plans, which is based on growth plans, which is based on matching the aspirations, which is based on leveraging different learning methodologies, not just classroom, not just online, not just action learning projects, but huge amount of diversity. All of that combined is where the answer lies. And that goes fitting into what the organizational culture is and what it permits. And if there are certain things which are crucial to success which don't exist, then it requires it to bring into organizational culture as well. Does that answer your question or throw light on what you wanted directionally?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I have one more question. I'll just type it.
Sure, please do that. In the meanwhile, I'll take on inside out and outside in mindset. Yeah, Prashant, typical tendency is that whenever somebody comes to a leader with a problem, the leader gives a prescription like a doctor. I call this as leader's prescription. If you see in a government hospital, a doctor sees on an average about maybe 200 patients in 1 hour. That hardly gives him any moments of time to investigate. So he hears part of the thing and he just writes whether you have a pain or you have fever, and he writes the medicine. Cut, bring it to leadership. The amount of challenges a leader faces in a day, over a period of time, the leader, unfortunately, by default, develops a habit of being prescriptive in nature. Listens to part of the problem, doesn't, without hearing it, provides a solution and tells the person to go back and, execute that. More often than not, the leader sees the problem coming back to the leader, which is where the prescription problem is, because it was leader's solution, reality for the real leader, not reality for the person. That is going outside in. I'm not saying that's bad, but the first tendency to go outside in is not the best one. An inside out mindset is which enables people to find solutions to their problems rather than giving our second-hand experience as a solution to them to go and implement. When a person finds the solution for themselves, the chances for successfully implementing them are much higher when they implement versus when they implement somebody else's suggestion. That's something that I would have for your question, Prashant. I hope that answers. Okay, please mention if the workshops are both virtual as well as in-class formats are available. Yeah, Ranjit, I did that. We've lined up 2 sessions of full day on Inside Out for those of you who would be interested. One on the 17th and one on the 22nd of this month. And of course, given the current situation, there are some huge considerations as well in terms of investments, for which you can get in touch with Ranjit or the mail IDs from which you will get a thank you note. We would love to interact with you. Also, we do pro bono consulting in case you want to look at suggestions around how do you bring in a coaching culture inside of the organizations. So would be happy to interact with you. All right, everyone, stay home, stay safe. Thank you for being there.